Welcome to Game 2 of the World Championship match between Carlsen and Anand. This time round, the World Champion Carlsen has the advantage of the white pieces. And without further ado, let's get into how the game progressed. Very Fischer-esque with the e4, and we quickly head into the Spanish Open. And if you're a betting person, and you'd bet on seeing the Berlin defense at some stage during the match, it would have been incredibly sure money, and it would have been paying you dividends already, as already in Game 2 we have the Berlin developing. But instead of going into the normal exchanging off straight into a Berlin type endgame, Carlsen went for the much quieter and positional, which is obviously to his advantage, d3 system, to which black came back with bishop c5. Now, at this point in time, should we say sort of between inverted commas, black usually has to commit to playing the bishop to e7, and then only when white goes later to d3, and then only afterwards white then plays the d3. But this variation is becoming increasingly popular within the Spanish, and in particular this move order, the bishop has no reason to fear going to c5 because of the fact that having played d3, it will be an extra tempo to get the pawn up to d4. So really there's nothing really to worry about as far as the bishop on c5 is concerned at this stage. Black continues with king safety, d6, rook e1, all looking very symmetrical. White has basically tried everything under the sun, but this particular move order is yet to be employed. Normally, people start with playing c3 or knight b to d2. So they're centralizing the rook already is somewhat of a novelty at top level play. White exchanges off, and it's not really a case that white can claim any real advantage here. His pawn structure is somewhat more solid, but at the same time this is compensated by his pawn structure is more superior, should be said, but black's position is solid, plus he has the pair of bishops at the moment. White continued with h3, rook e8, knight b2, knight b7, knight c4, bishop d6, a4, a5, knight takes, c takes, and there we go, black's got his pawn structure back again. So really nothing, the pawn structure side of things was nothing particularly to worry about for black at that early stage. White continued with d4, queen c7, and in many cases the presence of opposite colored bishops, as what we've got here at the moment, is normally an indicator of that the endgame will be drawn. But in this game in particular, white has a few moves at his disposal to be able to increase immense amount of pressure on Anand's position. And the more pressure that Carlsen exerted by playing quick and positive moves, the more longer and longer things that Anand went into, and the more indecisive he became, which eventually led to his downfall. So here the rook lift to a3 is somewhat unusual. Normally a rook would come, in the Spanish, would come into the center and then from the center attack up the d file. But it's normally something that a rook lift like this is something maybe that you normally see when somebody has their white square bishop on the board and they're planning to do something along the lines of the Greek gift bishop h7 sacrifice. Then the rook lift would be able to come slamming across to the king's side and get into the attack really quickly. So here the knight goes back to f8, and now Carlsen exchanges pawns in the center, opening up the file, and now knight h4. Now things start becoming incredibly clear. There is this brilliant outpost on f5 for the knight to be able to get to, plus moving the knight like that opens up the possibility of slamming the rook across there, and once the knight is on f5, there's a really useful attack going down onto g7, and what's more, the white then also has the possibility of a queen lift and a bishop lift, and all of a sudden things are going to be looking incredibly uncomfortable for the black king. So here black played rook d8, and maybe if he'd seen what had happened, he would have refused to play that move altogether, because it's forcing the queen to move, but the queen was going to be going to h5 anyway. So here Anand plays f6 to be able to allow some sort of a defense to get in towards that incredibly vulnerable g7 square that I was talking about. But now the knight simply drops down into that brilliant h5 position, and here is where the first place where Anand went astray. Obviously the white has got some immense threats going on here, and quite possibly the best alternative would have been to try and force the queen away, or for that matter a queen exchange, by playing the black queen across to f3. And in the post-match interview in this situation, Anand actually said that he was at this stage completely undecided on what to do. He was looking at the queen f7 move and the move that he played, which ended up being the first of his errors, but not nearly as diabolical as the error that he played later. But he was in a state of being completely undecided. Now psychologically, this put Anand at a huge disadvantage, because being undecided at this moment when white is mounting a huge attack means that effectively you've got no plan for defense, and this proved to be Anand's undoing in pretty short order. So instead of playing the stronger defensive move of queen f7, he played bishop e6, also defending at the f7 square. But actually what's now happening is that the bishop is now occupying the square that the knight potentially could have gone to be able to protect that g7 square. Right, that should probably be correct, that weakened g7 square. But now all that white needs to do is slam the rook across into g3, and now that infamous g7 square that I've been talking about all the way along is looking incredibly tenuous at best. So now the knight comes up to g6, blocking off obviously the threat onto g7, and now h4. simply increases the pressure. So now the black is forced to exchange off, gaining additional pressure, the pawn hitting the knight, so now the knight needs to move. Now just very importantly, if the knight had to move backwards, then all, for instance, if the knight had to, for instance, move backwards, then white would simply come up with the bishop and have an effective mating attack running down again onto that g7 square. So that was obviously out of the question. So knight f4 was played, bishop takes, e takes, rook c3, strong move here, and black pushing to get some sort of degree of counterplay going, but the rook comes up to e6, and it's now clear that white has a tremendous amount of pressure running along the e file, and looking to, by way of, for instance, with the rook that's come across to c3 as well, the attack onto g7 has elapsed, but now taking control of the e file like this, there's the possibility of dropping the queen back, the rook, the c rook can get across onto the e4 square, and really that's going to be then putting out at an incredibly vulnerable e7 square and a potentially slightly less vulnerable e8 square. So here the game moves continued with rook a d8, rook c4, queen d7, king h2. Obviously, the king h2 is to prevent black from being able to get down onto d1 with check. So by playing the king to h2, this simply means that the queen trade on d1 won't be happening, and what's more, white's king here is in an incredibly sound and strong position. So the game continued, rook f8, passive, but really there wasn't really much to do. There's no really clear defensive plan for black. White's pieces are working brilliantly cohesively. Here, for instance, white could have captured the pawn straight away, but he was more interested in mounting the pressure along that e file. And the queen comes back to e2 as I mentioned earlier, and it's all over basically, just about by the shouting. White's got tremendous pressure and a tremendous advantage. Here black tries to apply some queenside pressure, and just by playing d3 it maintains the tension. White takes, so black takes pawn. Now in this situation, for instance, white could have taken with the rook, for instance, but in the post-match interview, Carlsen said he liked the construction of his attack along the e file, so he didn't want to ruin that, so he took with the b pawn, rook b4, rook e7, now things are starting to look tenuous as far as that g7 pawn is concerned again, from the point of view of developing a mating attack, now that Carlsen has latched onto the 7th rank. The queen comes up to d6, queen f3, Now the queen is starting to look at ways of getting up to the 7th rank of the board. Rook takes e4, queen takes, which now, with the exchange of rooks, opens up the possibility of the queen getting to b7, and again the hit back onto that poor little g3 square. So what does black do here? He pushes the pawn to play check. White just plays g3, and there's really nothing much that black can do about the white king position. The bishops are off the board. His pieces are in an incoherent type of manner, but importantly at the moment, white has got this killer threat onto b7, and really the only possible move that black has at his disposal here at the moment is possibly doing queen d2, so that if there's queen f3, queen c2, king g2, and although black is sort of in a close to lost position here, it's all not really all over bother shouting as it is here. But bearing in mind that Anand was literally down to, I think it was about 2 or 3 minutes left in his clock, still another 7 moves from the time control, and with all of that pressure together, he simply cracked under the pressure and played the absolutely horrendous move of h5. And all that means that now the queen goes to b7 and it's all over. I mean, there's nothing really that black can do to prevent or nothing concrete that black can do to prevent the mating threat coming down onto g7. The only possible thing that he could possibly do to prevent the mate on g7 would be the horrendous move of taking the rook, but then he's simply down the queen and the game will be lost anyway. So in this position, Anand resigned the game, and after only 2 games played, Carlsen, the defending champion, has already taken the lead in the match, and it will be interesting to see after the rest day how Anand is able to come back from here in game 3, but that we will need to wait until next time. But it was an additional item that was very interesting to note in the just before the match started, that the players had bottled water at their disposal, but Carlsen had a bottle of orange juice at his disposal as well, as a way of being able to top up his glycogen levels during the course of the match, using the fructose from the orange juice to retop his glycogen levels to be able to keep his energy levels up through the course of the entire game. And that was a resource that Anand did not have at his disposal, and perhaps that might be something that Anand might be needing to do, because as we all know, that a long 4-5 hour chess game like this burns an immense amount of mental energy, and we really need to look at good whole food ways of keeping our glycogen levels up, so that we don't become too fatigued, too exhausted later on in the game. But that is how the game was won. Please join me after round 3 of the Carlsen and Anand match, when I'll be taking a closer look at that game as well. Post your comments and questions down below, and don't forget to click the like button as well. And also down below this video is a big red subscribe button. Click that as well. That way you can stay subscribed to my channel for the video analysis of additional games as they happen throughout the course of this match. And by subscribing, you'll be one of the first to know of the new uploaded videos in the exact moment that they happen. Stay carved up for your win. See you next time. Cheers.